Inside the dazzling walls of the Topkapi Palace lived a world that had sparked fantasies for centuries, the Ottoman Imperial Harem. But this wasn't just a collection of beautiful women waiting on a powerful man. It was a political machine, a brutal training ground and a ladder to almost unbelievable power. The journey from enslaved girl to empress wasn't paved with jewels, but with a secret set of protocols that governed their most intimate moments. It was a world where a single night with the Sultan could make you a queen, but only if you mastered the unwritten laws of his bedchamber. Breaking them meant ruin, but mastering them could change the course of an empire. In this video, we're pulling back the curtain on the secret rules that decided every woman's fate inside the harem's gilded cage. Before we unlock the secrets of the seraglio, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. And let us know in the comments what other historical mysteries you want us to explore next. The first, most basic rule of the harem was simple. Until you were seen, you didn't exist. For most of the women inside, life was a blur of obscurity. The palace housed hundreds, sometimes well over 1,000 women, but the vast majority would never even see the Sultan, let alone share his bed. They were called odalisques, and they worked as chambermaids and personal servants to the more powerful women of the royal family. They were the invisible foundation the whole hierarchy was built on. Imagine a young woman just arrived, her name and past stripped away. Her first lesson was in humility and service. Her days were a strict cycle of chores and training, all under the sharp eyes of senior women and the intimidating eunuchs who guarded the harem's secrets. But even here, ambition was encouraged. The ultimate goal was to be noticed by the one man who held the keys to everything, the Sultan. Catching his eye was a mix of luck and strategy. It might happen during a walk through the gardens or at a festival, but more often than not, being chosen was a calculated political move made by the most powerful woman in the Ottoman Empire, the Valide Sultan, the Sultan's own mother. She was the ultimate gatekeeper. To have any chance of rising, a girl first had to get on the good side of the woman who ruled the harem with an iron fist. If you failed to get noticed, you were destined for a life of servitude, eventually married off to some minor official, your potential gone before it ever had a chance to shine. Being beautiful got you in the door, but it was never enough. The second rule demanded that any woman chosen for the Sultan had to be a masterpiece of culture and class. Once an odalisque was picked out for her potential, her real education started. The harem was essentially one of the most exclusive and demanding finishing schools in history. These women spent years in intense training to become the perfect companions. They learned to read and write Ottoman Turkish and Persian, to write poetry that could melt a monarch's heart, and even debate philosophy. They were taught to play music, to sing, and to dance with a grace that could mesmerize the entire court. This wasn't just about entertainment. It was about sharpening a mind enough to engage a sultan who spent his days with the greatest thinkers and leaders of the era. And of course, there was a more private curriculum. It wasn't a formal class, but older, experienced women would instruct the chosen girls on how to please the sultan. This knowledge was their sharpest weapon in the quiet, viciously competitive war of the bedchamber. A woman who could capture the sultan's mind and enthrall his body was a woman who could hold his attention, and with it, his power. This training turned a girl from a simple servant into a real player in the great game of empire. Once a woman was finally ready, she had to take the most terrifying and important walk of her life, the one to the Sultan's bedchamber. This journey was a heavily ritualized ceremony. After being bathed, perfumed, and dressed in stunning silks and jewels, the chosen concubine would be led through the maze-like halls of the palace. The path she walked has sometimes been called the Golden Road, supposedly connecting the harem to the Sultan's private rooms. Whether that was its official name or not, This walk was a public announcement in the closed world of the harem. Every other woman watched her go. It was a moment of incredible victory for her, and one of bitter jealousy for her rivals. The pressure was unimaginable. Her entire future rested on what happened in the next few hours. When she arrived, she was expected to show complete deference. She would enter the bedchamber, approach the foot of the Sultan's bed, and wait for him to acknowledge her. If he was pleased, he'd invite her to join him. This one night could be the start of her rise to power, or it could be her only glimpse of that world. If she failed to impress him, she'd be sent back to the lower ranks of the harem, her moment in the spotlight over forever. But if she succeeded, she would wake up with a new title, Iqbal, or the Fortunate One. She'd be given her own private apartments, her own servants, and a big salary. She was no longer invisible. She was now a favorite, a position she would have to fight like hell to keep. The fourth rule was absolute and brutally enforced: total sexual exclusivity. A woman in the harem belonged to the Sultan, period. Her body was considered the sacred property of the emperor. This was the foundation of the entire harem structure, designed to guarantee the purity of the royal bloodline. Any doubt about who fathered a potential heir could send the entire empire into a succession crisis. To enforce this, the harem was basically a fortress of surveillance. The Kapiyaha, the chief white eunuch, controlled access from the outside, while the Kizlar-Aha, the chief black eunuch, was the third most powerful official in the empire and had absolute authority inside the harem walls. He and his army of eunuchs were the ever-present guards, watching every move and listening to every whisper. The punishment for breaking this rule was swift and merciless. Legends and some sensationalized accounts tell of guilty concubines being tied in a sack and drowned in the Bosphorus. Whether this is entirely true or not, the threat was potent. This law created an atmosphere of paranoia, but it also cemented the Sultan's ultimate power. For a concubine, this meant her whole world, her affection, her ambition, her very body was aimed at one man. Her loyalty had to be absolute, because the price of betrayal was the highest anyone could pay. A night with the Sultan brought favor, but the fifth and most critical rule was the only path to real, lasting power. She had to have a son. Giving birth to a male heir was the ultimate goal for any ambitious concubine. The moment a woman had her first son, her status changed completely. She was elevated to the rank of Kadin, or official consort, a position of incredible prestige. Her son was now a Sejeh, a prince, and a potential future sultan. As his mother, she commanded a new level of respect and was given her own staff of servants and a much larger income. She became a political player herself, the head of her own household inside the palace. But this promotion came with a strange and vital consequence. For much of Ottoman history, once a concubine gave the Sultan a son, her sexual relationship with him was expected to end. This seemingly cruel custom had a cold political logic. It stopped one woman from having multiple sons and creating a single dominant faction in the harem. It also made sure the Sultan would keep seeking new concubines, spreading his favor and producing more potential heirs to keep the dynasty secure. For the Kadin, her focus now switched from seducing the Sultan to protecting her son. Her life became a new, more dangerous game, a political chess match to ensure that her son, not a rival's, would one day take the throne. The harem was filled with these rival mothers, each scheming to put her child in power, knowing that one son's succession often meant the death or imprisonment of all the others. If you're finding these secret rules as fascinating as we do, take a moment to support the channel. Hitting that like button really helps us create more content like this. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a journey into the past. The final rule of power was that no matter how high a concubine climbed, she was always just a player in a game run by someone else, the Valide Sultan. The Sultan's mother was the undisputed queen of the harem, the very top of the female power structure. Her authority was absolute. She approved the women presented to her son, managed the harem's massive budget, and acted as a key political advisor to the Sultan himself. For any concubine, even a powerful Khadin, the Valide Sultan was an ally to be won over or an enemy to be feared. She could lift up a favorite, giving her more opportunities to see the Sultan, or she could easily crush any woman she saw as a threat. The Valide often managed the rivalries between the princes' mothers, playing them against each other to keep a balance of power. The story of Hurrem Sultan, who went from a captured slave to the legal wife of Suleiman the Magnificent, is a legendary example of someone who mastered this system. She didn't just win the Sultan's heart, she outmaneuvered the Valide Sultan and all her rivals to become one of the most powerful women in Ottoman history. But for every Hurrem, there were thousands of other women whose dreams were quietly snuffed out by the will of the Queen Mother. Rising in the harem was a dangerous game, but challenging the Valide Sultan was challenging the master of the game itself. So, what do we make of the Imperial Harem? It was a world of shocking contradictions. It was a prison made of silk and gold, but also a backdoor to political influence. It was a system built on sexual servitude that somehow gave women a platform for incredible power. These rules meant that a woman's body was her main asset, but it was her intelligence, her ambition, and her political skill that really decided her fate. The daily life of a concubine was a relentless, high-stakes competition, a climb where every conversation mattered, and every choice could lead to glory or despair. The harem wasn't just a fantasy backdrop for a sultan's life. It was a complex and often brutal world where women weren't just objects, but active players in the destiny of an empire. They were survivors, schemers, and mothers who, against all odds, carved out their own power from within the very walls built to hold them back.